which is the Auckland War Memorial Funding and Levy Agreement. And there's been some pretty good work getting to this point, I have to say. Congratulations to the Deputy Mayor for getting something on the table for a 3-year funding agreement. And, well, hang on, I'll get to the end of it. We've got on with doing this while we wait for the government to meander their way through changing legislation, which will come. And it's good work, and I enjoyed meeting the museum team last month, I have to say. We have people from the museum to give us a bit of a presentation, and I may as well take a mover in a second to right from the start. I'm pretty sure it's the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Walker. So that's been moved and seconded. There's a outside chance that this might be a little quicker than the last one, but the TAB is not placing any bets on that. Welcome, Professor Richard Bedford, David Reeves and James Liddell. Thank you very much. And it's over to you. Nice picture on the screen, I might say.
Thank you, Worship. I just briefly, I will outline the agreement. This is the funding agreement for the museum. But first, we have, as you've introduced, museum representatives who have a short presentation and will make some comments on the agreement.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to come. We really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with councillors. As you're aware, we have our Chief Executive, David Reeves, who will be new, I think, to some councillors because he recently took up his role as the museum's Chief Executive, and James Liddell, our External Relations Manager. I'd just like to start by thanking the Council for the support that you and the ratepayers, of course, provide the museum every year. It's very substantial, and it's humble in some ways for us to acknowledge that ratepayers contribute such a significant part of the operation of this cultural institution. I want to assure you we are very mindful of the financial constraints that the Council is working with, and we do appreciate very much the cooperation that we've had over the last 6 or 7 months, working on ways that we can address aspects of our Act and also aspects of our funding arrangements which are built into that Act. And that has been a very constructive process, and we will hear more about that shortly. But we thought it would be useful to start by just quickly going over some of the performance elements for the last 12 to 18 months to give you a sense of some of the work we've been doing with the communities in Auckland. We have a very brief presentation, a video presentation, and then David Reeves is going to talk through some of our key elements before we move directly to the item on the agenda. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Richard. Called David Reeves, aho. As Richard has just said, new Chief Executive. This is my first opportunity to address you, but I have met a number of you in past years, as I had 12 years on the executive team of the Auckland War Memorial Museum. Recent performance of the museum, I'm not going to slavishly read all of those bullet points to you. I appreciate you've had a long day already, and I will endeavour to be concise and constructive. I do want to point out that our visitation is on target for this current financial year. We've had good responses from the public and also steady growth in international tourism. Our education visits have been slightly less than target for the 22-23 year, as schools have been slower than expected to come out of the COVID lockdowns, but we are on target for growth this coming year with good bookings in terms 2 and 3. Our online offer continues to perform very strongly and is something that we are looked to internationally and nationally in terms of the way we engage off-site from our museum. Of particular note is the self-generated revenue that we've been able to achieve. This has been driven in part by the strong tourism recovery, but also Aucklanders have come back to the museum following the COVID lockdowns, and we've achieved quite a substantial change in the per visitor spend from around $12 per person before COVID to around $30 per person in the current year. And this is enormously gratifying for us because it enables us to do more of the good things that we endeavour to deliver for Aucklanders. I also need to point out that we have an old and complex building. We have a 20-year asset management plan which looks comprehensively at weather tightness, at building systems like air conditioning, security systems, wiring, lighting, all of those things that make a building work. A number of these are at their end of life phase, and so we have a comprehensive 20-year plan to progressively replace those, but that is not a cheap exercise in such a complex and much loved heritage building. I want to now go to a very short video just to outline some of the external work that we do in working with communities in a variety of ways. This is a 2-minute video, and I think it will be more efficient for you to watch that than for me to talk for 2 minutes, so please enjoy it. Hopefully it's going to run. Here it is. So that outlines a bit of the flavour of what we've been up to. Now looking at the year ahead, the first year of the 3-year proposed funding agreement that you are considering today. We have set ourselves a strong self-generated revenue target of 19.73 million. That's our highest ever target. We have 2 international touring exhibitions scheduled, locked in and ready to be promoted, as well as 2 homegrown smaller exhibitions utilising our own collections and those of other organisations around Aotearoa. The key things that we'll achieve in the upcoming financial year is the phased opening of our new Natural Environment and Human Impacts Gallery on the middle floor of the museum. we need to begin the planning and engagement of the complete renewal of the Māori Court and Pacific galleries. My aim is to have those completely redone by the centenary of the museum in 2029. It would be a crying shame if we celebrated the centenary of that building with 30-year-old exhibitions in those galleries. So we need to start that work now. We will be strengthening our education delivery over the coming year and also beginning an approach to more proactive repatriation of taonga in line with a number of international museums and other museums around New Zealand. So the funding for the next 3 years, the request that we have been working with council officials on, the figures are there and they're in your papers. As I've said, we've set ourselves high self-generated revenue targets. We will be aiming towards a 60-40 split, 60% council funding, 40% generated from third parties by the end of the 3-year period. The 3-year funding agreement we are very much looking forward to because it gives both yourselves and us a degree of certainty, and it means that we can spend our time and energy talking about what we're doing rather than the fine points of the money here and there. The terms in the report have you've got in your report. There are some minor things still to be decided, but we are in full support of what is proposed. And that's all I have to say on that.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Got a few questions. I'll just rattle the questions off if that's okay, and you can just pick how you want to answer them. So one of the things I'd like to know is just how you're getting on building the case for more funding from government. In the context around that, you know, we've got more treasures, more taonga than they have down in Te Papa, and quite clearly the outreach that you're doing, everything that you're doing goes to a national context. So that's one question. The other question I've got just follows on from your, I guess what I'd call international exhibitions, particularly Egypt and the like. It'd be good to know just what the relative success of those things are. I understand that there's a cost attached to bringing them in, but it would be useful to know just how they pan out. The other question just goes to your exhibits, if that's the appropriate expression, because you have pointed out that in some parts of the museum things are tired and there's a need for a refresh, and quite obviously the most outstanding one is the Māori and Pacific, which is critical. So really three questions, and I guess a related one, given the enhanced revenue from, let's call it tourism and the like, whether you see more scope in that, particularly if we can encourage better transport and integrate that with the tourism offering in Auckland, and just any comment on what council could do in that respect.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor, for your questions. On the government funding matter, we met with Minister Goldsmith 3 weeks ago and introduced him to the museum and our financial situation, and the matter of future government funding was certainly on our agenda. He listened politely, as you would expect, and made no commitments, as you would expect. But those conversations are underway. It's also something that in my first 6 months in the role, I've met with officials from the Ministry for Culture of Heritage in Wellington on a number of occasions. They are aware of our work in this area. And 2 weeks ago, Chairman Richard Bedford and I were in Christchurch on business, and were able to meet with the directors of Canterbury Museum and Otago Museum, who are facing similar issues, and we have a strategy around making approaches for particular things where we believe that there's a case for partnership funding with central government. Things like education, things like natural science and biodiversity research, things like repatriation of taonga Māori to communities. Your question about the relative success of the special exhibition program, the business cases for those are predicated on them being profit-making. We have to book those in 2 and 3 years in advance, and so we can't always be 100% certain of the break-even point because costs shift in the meantime, and audience preferences can shift. But happy to say that the recent Pharaohs in the time of Egypt was very successful. We had 17% higher visitation than we were predicting, and particularly retail spend was above prediction as well. And we're expecting that the upcoming Relics exhibition, which will open in May, which is a whimsical look at a post-apocalyptic world where Lego has taken over all of our rubbish and detritus and leftover bits and pieces, that is looking to be a highly profitable exhibition as well. So that special exhibition program is a key part of reducing the reliance on council funding. You had a question about the refreshing of the older exhibits. Again, we have a program stretching out to 2039. We have a stated position of the board is that by 2039 we want to have no exhibit older than 20 years. And so we've got a program, and in fact the team are working today on a workshop to look at what the planning for that means over the next 15 years. And your final question about tourism. We are seeing good growth, but we are at the whim of what happens internationally and what happens with airlines bringing people in. We are in constant contact with the tourism industry, Aotearoa, and keeping track with their trends and with their predictions. And our estimates of visitation that are in what's behind the numbers that we've presented to you today is based on quite scientific estimates of percentages of those visitation numbers.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Good answer, thanks. I don't have any other questions, or do I? No. I think you've probably withdrawn now. Deputy. Sorry, I do have a question from Councillor Newman, and I think the Deputy Mayor wants to make a comment.
Yeah, look, thank you. I'm just wondering, I love the War Memorial Museum. I love Motorhead as well, but really love the museum. So can I just ask, I know that the general admission is free for Auckland residents and members, but do you have any idea of roughly what percentage of Auckland residents nevertheless pay when they come? We pay our ticket, pay our full price, because I know it's for a good cause. Have you got any idea of your numbers?
Yeah, through the chair, it's at 60% now, so it's grown from 43% pre-COVID to 60% now.
Okay, look, I didn't read the details fully, but I think that is absolutely fantastic, because it is free, but there are people who are choosing to make that decision as much as they're choosing to go there. And I know that not everybody can afford it, so those who can't, fine, but I won't be commenting further, Chair, but thank you.
Yeah, good point. I'm quite happy to make a donation when I go there if it looks obvious, that's all. I don't want to embarrass anybody who can't. Deputy Mayor Simpson, who can make a donation.
And does.
Exhibition of the clothing there at some stage, which would draw a huge crowd.
I'm not dead yet. With respect to what you have clothing. Okay, let's just. Your Worship, in all seriousness, it gives me great pleasure to move this today, because it is indeed, I believe, great news for both Auckland Council and the museum. It provides certainty, reduces conflict, and will allow a conversation about modernising the museum's relationship with Council to be ongoing and take place. The proposed increases are moderate, and I think that's welcome on certainly our side, but very agreeable by you as well. And it effectively delivers the first result from the political working party, Your Worship, that you tasked me to to deliver on. And I do want to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Bedford, your chairmanship of the board, your willingness to engage, and I mean, respectfully, this hasn't happened before. Not that you haven't happened before, but you know what I'm saying, don't you? We've never been in this place before. And I think it's really healthy for both sides, and that's a big credit to you. Chris, I want to give credit to you as well. You've negotiated with the museum staff very, very well, and I think it's an outcome that we are all happy with. So thank you to the staff involved, both at the museum side and our side, for your work. We've still got a long way to go, but I'm certainly very confident that this sets us up for the future. Our next stage, of course, is the ongoing discussion around legislative change, and we've had a conversation with the Minister, you've had a conversation with the Minister, and I think there's a clause in the agreement that actually keeps that conversation going. So I just want to give a huge vote of thanks to you for being so willing to come to the party and work with us. It's an important time for you, an important time to us. It's a bit of a milestone, and I think it's congratulations all round, really. Thank you very much.
It's the seconder to the motion. Councillor Walker wants to say a little bit too.
Yes, so commendations to yourself, Desley, around achieving this 3-year agreement. That's really good in terms of certainty for the museum. My main comment is in the instance of the museum, it ain't broken, it's whole, and in my opinion is very well run. So I put a question mark over the necessity for changes. There's obviously a criticality around being financially viable, and you're on track to do that. So I would hope that we can look forward to another year in the next 3 years that will be a raging success, because it is an outstanding museum, both nationally but internationally. And its collection, both in respect of a physical sense and the increasing digital collection, is equally outstanding on a global scale. So you really hit well above your base, in my opinion. So thank you very much. I enjoy going there. My family enjoys going there. Everybody I know enjoys going there. And whenever I see a tourist buzzing around, I always say to them, go to the museum. It's a must.
Thank you, Councillor. We really appreciate this comment.
Okay, very good. I'm going to tell them to go to Motet as well, just in case, to get the value down, the cost down. Righto, I'm ready. Oh, no, Baker.
Yeah, because I say a lot. Yeah, look, I just want to add too that I think I'm really pleased to see us moving to these 3-year funding agreements. They are something that we should be doing. In my view, we should be putting a RAFA legislation to bed at some stage because it's no longer fit for purpose, and that's something that would be great to see happen. And so these funding agreements allow you guys to have certainty, it allows you to leverage other funding, and is a far better outcome. And I did love the way that Morris smiled intently when you talked about the relic, I think, exhibition, because I think he was wanting to be in it. But that's, you know, well done. But nice work, and long may the work on the 3-year funding agreements continue. So nice to see you leading the way there.
On that note, I'll put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, bingo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And at the risk of upsetting my well-being, I'm going to ask for the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Report, which has been reviewed by the Audit Risk Committee, who have said it's bloody good. So now I'm prepared to take their word for it. Happy to move. Righto. Fooley, Walker Fooley. Don't feel kind of monstered, but if you're feeling monstered, that's okay. Even at the risk of upsetting certain sensitive members of the thing about my ability to run a meeting, I'm encouraging you to be prompt about this, but very good. Thank you for coming.
Kia ora koutou. So this is the standard report that is referred from the Audit and Risk Committee. This report was tabled at the February committee meeting and was deferred from the February governing body meeting to this one. So the date of the performance indicators is December 2023. You'll get an updated version of this at the next meeting, which I believe is after the May Audit and Risk Committee report. So look, I will keep this relatively short. The Mayor's referred to some commentary from the Audit and Risk Committee, and I won't go into that. And I will take the report broadly as read in the interest of time. I will note that the majority of the activity we're going through at the moment is to strengthen the control environment around how we manage health, safety and wellbeing to ensure that our staff have the systems, processes and capabilities to be able to manage the safety of work and the wellbeing of kaimahi through the work that they do. So the work that we're doing focuses predominantly on risk management and ensuring that the systems that we use are not bureaucratically heavy and that deliver value as we move forward. Happy to take any questions on any of the content within the report though.
Councillor Watson.
Very quick one. It goes to the recommendation from the Audit and Risk of range of opportunities to improve the systems that support good health, safety and well-being. Do we have, as we did have under the previous regime, the facility for staff members to go to an outside entity for any concerns or issues they might have within the organisation? Is that still in place?
Thanks for the question. So yes, if we're referring to a speak up process, so if staff feel like they have something they want to raise from it that is a concern, they don't want to raise that internally through internal channels, we do have an external service that they can access to raise any issues, and that's then referred back appropriately through the right channels within the organisation.
Just a quick follow-up in that process of referring back, that the person obviously remains anonymous, and what is the line of communication that then takes place on behalf of that person?
So we ensure that the person who's made the disclosure, their identity is protected to the degree possible. They will at some point be asked whether or not they want to disclose their identity in order to progress certain things. For example, if it was a disciplinary issue, it's very hard to do that without disclosing who the person is that's making the complaint. But we do try and ensure that confidentiality throughout that process and deal with the issue at hand only.
Okay, final question, what has been the uptake of that facility?
We haven't had a huge uptake of the external service because we have an internal service as well that delivers a similar approach through a number of channels. Most of the speak up issues that get raised through the internal system. However, we're also looking at that as to whether or not that's sustainable and effective and the best approach, because it may be actually easier and cheaper to go external on all of them.
We haven't. I haven't got the stats here, Councillor, but they are available.
Give that, Councillor Hills.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for the report. I have three questions. The first one is just the incidents, although they look flat, over time they're actually, am I correct that the incidents and near misses are actually higher as an average, or tracking higher? Or is it just I can't see years gone by?
A little bit from column A, a little bit from column B on that one. So one of the things that we've seen is an increase in our reporting culture. Part of that is due to the reporting system improvements we've made, which has made it easier to report something that has happened. And then the second part is a more willing disclosure. So staff feel more able to tell us when things are happening. It is important to note as well, when we're looking at an increasing number of incidents, that many of those incidents are successful incidents. They're telling us that something's happened. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything went wrong. It's just that there was an incident that occurred.
Okay. The other question is in relation to EAP. So under the risks, it says that can't remember what the exact word is, sorry, the medium or needs improvement is the lack of available counsellors and resources for staff to access EAP. And then later on, it's obviously got graphs where EAP cases drop off and presenting issues are dropping off and cases by directorate are dropping off. But I'm assuming those two are connected. If they can't access it, then those other things look better. Well, not better, because I think accessing EAP is actually a really good thing, not something we should be concerned. You know, it's not a negative thing.
There's and a great question actually, very perceptive. There is a third item that modifies that, and that's in relation to the delivery of pastoral care within the organisation, which was a recommendation that was made in the Hot Water Review of 2021 that we provide this service. What we're seeing is an uptake in pastoral care support being delivered within the organisation, and the working theory is that that's offsetting some of the EAP usage. However, we also know that those people who are applying to seek EAP support, they're dealing with a constraint within that system where there's just not enough counsellors nationally to be able to support at short notice.
Okay, and sorry, it'll be 4 questions because this is additional to that. So if they can't access the counsellors in the EAP service, what does it bounce back to? Does it come back to just leaving them on a waiting list, or does it come back to management to help them? I know it's confidential, but what if those people are getting high stress, which is what it says, what happens?
So one of the things that the pastoral care team is doing is you could consider it an early intervention. So a lot of the lower level stuff we're taking away from EAP and delivering that internally through a prompt conversation before it becomes more of an issue. What that does is it also allows us to ensure that those people who really need support can access it, because EAP is not then tied up with lower level interventions that may be better dealt with internally.
Cool. And last question, probably maybe more for you, Phil. The 2 things. One, we had feedback at the stakeholder day, Māori Outcome Stakeholder Day, that there is a concern from members of the public that they're feeling, being attacked through the racism against Māori at the moment. The other thing around staff feeling that way, and today we had the rainbow crossing painted over and threats from Destiny Church that they're going to continue attacking council events and council structures, I guess, that have rainbow-related themes. What are we doing to beef up security or beef up support for not only staff but keep communities safe? Because if those threats are, unfortunately, they were real 2 days ago and then we saw it this morning, are we thinking of, I don't know what supports we can provide, but for communities and staff?
Probably have to take some of the actions that we, in terms of beefing up external security around events and work and what have you. That's quite a significant challenge, obviously. You'll be aware that we have, for other reasons, but related to aggression and behavioural problems that our staff face, we have taken the step of putting security in some venues. So there's a few practical interventions there. I think the other part of it, though, is, and I get a lot of feedback from staff around how it's welcomed. The communication that we have going into the organisation is really important. Okay, the leadership commitment that we give voice to in terms of our commitment around Māori outcomes, treaty relationships, the fact of us valuing diversity and inclusion and having the mechanisms that we have, staff support arrangements, the advisory panels and so on. These are good, tangible acknowledgements of the nature of our workforce and that people are valued. So it's, there's, I suppose, some soft stuff that's really important in terms of leadership-wise, what we're expressing into the organisation. Might sort of take offline and have some discussion with Paul and others about, how we are dealing with the external service delivery related aspects of this. But I can tell you it's real and it's certainly in the minds of staff.
But thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dub, please.
Thanks for this work. Just following up on the pastoral care on the original report at paragraph 20, I was intrigued by 27 individuals, but then I go to 13 teams. Can you just give us a sense of how many people we're dealing with in 13 teams? This is a new, relatively new service, and if you can comment about the 13 teams and just the trajectory of the growth in demand. I'd like to know, where it seems to be heading in that service. And then the following part, can you look at paragraph 17, and it's the second sentence, the remaining actions require resources which have instead been working. There's just probably an error in the sentence construction there I can't quite work out. Assuming you have those paragraphs in front of you.
Yes, so on the first questions there, the number of staff, I don't have that detail in front of me right now, but we do track that, so we know how many staff we're engaging with more broadly. So in many of the pastoral care cases, it is an individual that needs support. In some cases, it is a team that is processing something that may have happened. For example, a critical incident may have occurred, and we get the team together to debrief them and work through that with them. I don't have the numbers of the total number of people that are supported through that, but I do have it elsewhere. On the paragraph 17 issue, we have a small but effective wellbeing team. They generally provide a lot of the work and development required for the development of programs and initiatives that support wellbeing, but from time to time they are also required to go and provide that pastoral care service across the organisation. So as the number of cases starts to increase, it just means that they can't do some of the preventative work as quickly as they can. We're still processing whether or not that's a sustained increase over time or whether or not it's just a rebalancing because it is such a new service and it may plateau again in the next few months. We're continuing to track that and the impact on EAP as well.
One final one. There's a real rise of anti-Semitic rhetoric in this country, and does religious preference come up as a concern? Practicing one's religious preference, does that come up as a concern? Does that show up in any of the discussions you have with staff?
It's a good question. I'm just looking back to the information I've seen through EAP and through the pastoral care teams. I'm not aware of that being a significant issue within our community of Kaimahi, although I would expect that those staff who are externally facing may see that from time to time. I don't have data on that. What I can say is we do have some very strong staff networks that provide a lot of support and advocacy within the organisation, and those continue to network very well and be quite effective.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to move that we have the recommendation. Are you seconding it or are you questioning or doing both?
Oh, I'm happy to second it, but oh no, you already got a seconder. I just wanted to ask a question.
Councillor Bartley.
Yeah. I don't want to second that, it's just he asked me if I wanted to. I wanted to ask, please, is the support for staff proactive? Like when something comes up, do red flags go off and go, oh my God, we need to get to that team? And I'm specifically referencing the animal management staff and the death threats that they get and the fact that they have to lock up their place of work for what they, have to endure like that. It's really hard.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do three things. One is we proactively review incident reports as they come in, and if we do have a critical incident, we do apply resource into those areas. The other part is that we are proactively going out and engaging with staff who may not have reported anything, but if we identify that there is something in the conversation that has us worried about that individual, then we would lean in. The third part is specifically for animal management is a great example. They do have quite a highly stressful role. And so we have applied dedicated pastoral care resourcing into that team And through the engagement survey round that's just closed, we are getting a lot of positive feedback coming through from that team that it's making a difference to their lived experience at work.
Very good answers, Paul. I'd like to put the motion that we note the council as presented by the Audit and Risk Committee. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you, Paul. Carried. Summary of the Governing Body Committee Information Memorandum and Briefings. That's usually moved
Simpson Baker.
by
Simpson
Walker. Is
Baker.
it? And Baker?
No, Simpson and Baker.
Eh? I don't care, have a contest. Eh? Right, okay. All those in favour of that say please. And summary of the confidential decisions and blah, blah, blah. Moved and seconded by somebody or other and somebody else. All that in favour, please say that. Everyone going to exclusion and secrecy, please say that.
Public. Extension of
The
time, please.
entire public has just got up and wandered out.
Extension of time, please. Extension of time. Move and secret.
Yeah, well, while they're being secretive, all those in favour of being secretive.
No, extension of time first.
No, I'm going to do that now. All those in favour of an extension of time, moved and seconded by somebody or other and somebody else. And that means that A, we can carry on, B, Gail has gone.
No, you need to,
I would like to move a motion to speed time up. It's been particularly slow today. Rightio. I think we've got through all that.
you actually need to take a moment because the members online need to.
We're going to have a compulsory stop for 5 minutes while we go from digital to manual and manual back to digital. Thank you.